so when we're looking at fear, we have to also look at emotions at large, because of course fear is in the subcategory of emotions. So we have Puja Gurudev's BMI chart, and we see the body is perceiving objects, B and then T and O, right? And that's the world outside. And then the mind feels emotions, intellect thinks thoughts. So we're going to be referring back to this BMI chart. So now, when the body perceives objects, it's not just the body that's perceiving, it's also the mind that is perceiving. So when I look at the object, I either like it or dislike it. And so that's perception also. It's not that the object is totally seen as it is. It's seen in terms of my likes and dislikes. And then that goes for people too. So if I look at a person, then I think I like, I don't like. And I don't even need to know you. I'll just decide. I like, I dislike. And that's all of us. I'm not saying that I do it. All of us do it. Okay. So this mind feels emotions is not necessarily just feeling, but it's a lot of thinking. So the mind is also thinking and intellect is also thinking. But this is feeling-based thinking, emotional thinking. There's no formal word for it in Vedanta. It's just called mana, right? That kind of thinking is just mana. But for the purpose of our understanding, we'll call it emotional-based thinking. So part of perceiving the object is all our emotions around that object. So there's two things that happen. One, I see the object and it invokes emotion in me. A lot of people will see the cockroach and it invokes emotion in them, right? Whether fear, disgust, all the rest of it. The second thing is, I already have the emotion, and then I already have a mood and framework in my thinking, and then I see the object. So then I slot the object into already existing mood. So both can happen. The object can invoke the emotion, or the emotion's already there, and now I see the object through the emotion I'm already experiencing. So this is all feeling-based thinking. So the example I gave was liking it and disliking it. And then we're going to give a whole lot of more examples. And then there's intellect, buddhi. And so again, there's no technical term for this in Vedanta. It's just called buddhi. Like use your buddhi means intelligent thinking, reasoning, logic, and using discrimination. Remember, discrimination in Vedanta is a good thing. I understand good from bad, right from wrong. And today I'll be using those words. I try not to use those words because good and bad, one, are so vague, and two, we all have so many notions about it. But from a very moral point of view, we can say there are general things that we will all agree is good. Things like honesty, compassion, working together, all of that basically under the umbrella of good. And then under the umbrella of bad would be when we insensitive, we selfish, we greedy, critical, and we causing pain, right? General umbrella of bad. Now, we know already as mature adults that it's not so black and white, but we're not going to get into morality today. We're just going to understand emotional thinking versus intellectual thinking. Okay, so Gurudev, I used this example yesterday in class, so sorry if it's repetition for you. Gurudev gives this really nice example where he talks about when the mind and the intellect are in conflict, each one puts up a case of why you should listen to it. So Gurudev was diabetic and he would really enjoy sugar. And so one, there's the liking of sugar, and two, people who are diabetic tend to crave sugar. So it's not even that they, I like it, I eat it. The body actually does crave it. And then in Gurudev's case, it would be, this is the way people showed love. Right? It's there in a lot of cultures. You show love by feeding. Okay, so so people would bring him the sweets and say, I made it especially for you. And last time you came to my house, we enjoyed it so much. And then I'm not even anywhere near as loved as Gurudev, and you feel really bad, like, oh, okay, then I'll eat it. Because you don't want to make them feel like you're rejecting their love. Because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'll eat it. Even when you're trying to be disciplined, when there's emotions involved, it's very hard. And that's the point. Emotions is a whole different way of thinking. So he would say that the doctor is telling him. So he sees the gulab jamun. So he loved Indian sweets. So it would have been gulab jamun, it would have been mithai, it would have been kheer, or it would have been. And so he's looking at all of these beautiful things in front of him, and he'll say, the doctor has warned you, if you eat sugar, it's going to kill organ by organ by organ until you become a vegetable. And then he would go into the whole scientific thing of what happens when sugar gets into the body of a diabetic. Then he'd say, but the mind says, what kind of Swami are you? Everybody has to die. Death is inevitable. So if you have to die, you might as well die sweetly. So when we hear this argument, right, in our own mind, or even if somebody else tells it to us, as a Swami, I should have no attachment to my body, let whatever happens, happens. It starts sounding like a rational argument. Is it rational? How to know, right? Because it can sound so rational. Even when in the Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, when Arjuna doesn't want to fight the war, he gives all these amazing reasons for why they shouldn't be war. And they're good reasons. Like so many people would read chapter 1 and think, yeah, don't fight. And we do this all the time. There's books written on why Ravana was the hero of the Ramayana. And people read it and think, yeah, how do we get so convinced? Because it starts to appear like proper reasoning. Because it's all one thinking entity, right? Our mind and intellect is all one thinking entity. We can borrow information, snippets from what we've learned, what we've heard, what we've experienced. So it's not always easy to know when it's emotional thinking and when it's intellectual thinking. And you would think it would be easy, because when you have an emotion, aren't you feeling the emotion? Not necessarily. There's been times, I'm sure, when you have felt something and you're not sure what you're feeling. And there's been times, I'm sure, when somebody else says, oh, so you're scared about the new job. And you're like, no. And they're like, oh, okay. And you're thinking, why do you say that? I'm not scared. So they heard you, they heard fear, and then when they said it, you were like, no, so they, okay. Because most people are not going to tell you what you're feeling unless it's your family. Then, of course, they'll tell you, of course, you're scared. And then they walk off. So I'm sure you've experienced it. Somebody else can tell you have an emotion and you think you don't have the emotion. Why does that happen? So we're going to do spiritual based understanding here. Why does that happen? We can go into denial and all the rest of it, but I'm going to stay completely spiritual. Awareness. We lack awareness. Awareness is this amazing gift that we have. And we're using it all the time because we are aware of this room, you're aware of what I'm saying, you're aware of the temperature, you're aware of your own body. If you've eaten too much, if you're hungry, you're aware of it. If there's some kind of pain, you're aware of it. Yeah. And usually we'll be somewhat aware of what we feel. And we'll be aware of what we're thinking. But not completely. And we lose awareness because we get very caught up in the thinking and in the feeling. So Gurudev used to give this example that mind is a flow of thoughts. And if you're sitting on the banks, flow of thoughts like a river flows. So if let's think of a river, we're sitting on the banks of the river, and we're watching the flow of the water in the river. And as long as we're sitting on the bank of the river, we can see the entire flow of the river. We can see the speed, we can see the color, we can see the leaves floating along on the surface, we can see the other bank, we can see all of it. If the water is transparent, we can see inside all the way to the bed of the river. However, if we jump into the river, we can now no longer see the flow. Somewhat, we're part of the flow, so we're somewhat aware of the flow, but we don't have that big, clear picture that we did if we were sitting on the banks. And more often than not, with the mind as a flow of thought, we're not aware of mind. We've jumped in and we feeling everything, sometimes big, sometimes small. So when we lose awareness and we lose that big picture, then it's hard to know what is feeling-based thinking and intelligent-based thinking. So how will we know? How will we know what is feeling-based thinking? We have to know What is it we want? So here in these talks of fear, we have to know, what are we scared of? If there's something in particular we're scared of, a job interview coming up, we know, scared of this. A particular event coming up, have to go in to get COVID test. It's an event, we know what we're scared of. In everyday life, maybe we're not so aware of what we're scared of. Most of us will have a few anxieties, apprehensions, stresses, strains. And if we go back to last week's, if we go back to last week's discussion, we get scared of not getting what we want. So never mind cockroaches and heights and, big things like death and disease and divorce and those big things, of course, we're scared of, especially if there's a possibility of it and we become very aware of the possibility of it. But we're scared of very simply not getting what we want. So to know what we're scared of, we have to know what is it we want. Even that we're not so clear. Whenever the mind's in turmoil, like, what do you want? And the amount of times I've asked people that question, and they look at me like, wow. And sometimes we think we want both, or we're okay with either one happening in certain scenarios. But then when it comes to one happening, we realize, that's not what we wanted. How did we not know that until we didn't get it? Emotional-based thinking. So, first way to know when it's emotional-based thinking, we lack clarity. Second way to know if it's emotional-based thinking, there's a desire involved. Oh, if that's a criteria for emotional-based thinking, then that's our whole life, because we have so many desires. So to understand our fears, to understand the thinking that's involved in our fears, we have to understand emotional-based thinking. For us to be able to even get anywhere in understanding our emotional-based thinking, we have to be very clear. What do I want? What am I scared of not getting? For each scenario and for each person, it will be different. It could be what I want is financial security. Sometimes I'm willing to forgo financial security. I might even jeopardize making money. So what do I want? Not money. How will I know? I have to be willing to see what is it that I want. Sometimes it's attention. Sometimes it's a particular type of attention, a particular person's attention. Sometimes it's power. Sometimes it's validation. Different things drive each one of us, but there'll be some basic ones. Love will drive a lot of people. Security will drive a lot of people. And fear of getting or not getting those things will drive a lot of people. Money will drive a lot of people. And whatever it is that they understand money to be. So basically what I'm saying is, without us knowing what we want, we can get easily carried away with emotional thinking without us realizing it's emotional thinking. We think we're being rash because we've got all these solid reasonings. And you'll find some random scientist who did some experiment and came up with some statistics. See, this is why I shouldn't. Whatever it is that I don't want to do. And please note, it's I don't want to do. Emotional thinking will help me do what I want to do and make sure I don't do what I don't want to do. So, emotional thinking basically is me making sure I get what I want. But is it what I want? No, it's what the mind wants. Because remember, there's three parts of me: body, mind, intellect. Body doesn't think, so we leave it out of the equation. It will just listen. Who will it listen to? Whoever's stronger. If intellect is stronger, body listens to intellect. If mind is stronger, my body listens to mind. Body is like that only child in the house, whichever parent yells louder, it will listen. So, our intellect also has desires. And intellect desires, of course, there can be vanity of knowledge and can be the pursuit of power. All of that can be in the intellect as well. But the intellect is primarily driven by wanting to grow, evolve, be better, and do better. That's really the drive of intellect. Mind has way more desires because mind wants to enjoy all the senses. Mind wants attention and flattery and pampering. And mind wants life to be easy. So mind has a lot more desires because it has a larger range. And so mind doesn't want to have to struggle. It doesn't want to share. It doesn't want to think too much. So the mind will desire things that are more short-term, not necessarily things that are bad, but things that are more short-term, because it doesn't have vision. Mind is not capable of having vision, whereas intellect has vision, and so it will desire things that are more long-term and things that will require struggle because it wants us to grow. And so the desires will often be in conflict, which many of us experience. Many of us experience, I want this, but I also want this, but this is good, but this is also good. All of that we all experience. So I said, the mind makes sure that I get what I want. But actually it makes sure I get what the mind wants, not necessarily what the intellect wants. And so the awareness again has to be there. This awareness is just the awareness is the solution. There really, I cannot at this point in time think of another solution. Maybe we'll have stepping stones to how to get to awareness, but awareness is the solution. So we'll do a few examples to help understand how emotional thinking can be so convincing. And how we have to know that it's emotional thinking. So the first example is in the Ramayana. Dashrath Maharaj is very, very, very proud of his son, Sri Ram. Rightfully so. Ramchandraji is a very capable young boy, very intelligent, very skilled, very compassionate, has incredible wisdom of the scriptures, and is able to distinguish very clearly what is the best way to act in any given situation. So what we hear is capable, competent, efficient. In the Ramayana story, sage Vishwamitra comes along and tells Dashrath Maharaj, please allow me to take your sons into the forest so that they can help me destroy this band of Rakshasas who are causing so much havoc in the forest and disturbing the ashram and killing off the brahmacharis, etc., etc. And Dashrath Maharaj's immediate reaction is, no. Take my entire army, but don't take Ramchandra. Now, actually, if we think about it, he's giving the army, right? Where's the problem? Can you see a problem? Can I see the problem? You can see the problem? Anyone else can see the problem? He's giving. Vishwamitra wants to kill demons. He's giving army. Nobody can see problem. Vishwamitra asked for Ram, not the army. Why won't he give Ram? Let me recap Rama's qualities. Capable. What did I say? Efficient. I said one more. Competent. skilled warrior, able to reason. Why won't he give Ram? Anyway, Ram has to become the leader of the army. Very good. Attachment. Why won't he give Ram? Nothing should happen to my Ram. What about all those soldiers that you just said? Take my whole army. What about them? If you're worried something's going to happen, something will happen to them as well. No, that did not feature in the thinking. Take them. Just don't take my... And then, as you all agreed with Dashrath Maharaj, logic will say, but I'm giving you army. There's no problem. You're being unreasonable by asking for Ram. Take the army. But it's emotional thinking. It just sounded logical. It's completely emotional thinking. There's another incident in the Mahabharata. Ram went, by the way, in case you're wondering. How did Dashrath Maharaj get convinced that Ram went? The Guru Vasishta told Vishwamitra, Dashrath Maharaj, that it's in his destiny that he will go with Vishwamitra and he'll come back with a bride. So if you don't send him, he won't come back with a bride. So suddenly Dashrath Maharaj was like, oh, not only Ram will come back, bride will come back. Okay, you can take it. Is this rational, logical thinking? Yes.
Because even his destiny will come back. So there's no worry about him not coming back.
Guaranteed. Destiny has guaranteed he'll come back. That's emotional thinking. That is complete emotional thinking. Plus, Indian parent wanting kid to get married, complete emotional thinking. Because I want daughter-in-law. Dashrath Maharaj, not me. I'm just trying to show you how emotional thinking can seem so rational. Yudhishthira was told in his destiny he would be responsible for the worst war to ever be fought in all of time, the Mahabharata war. He knew the number of people that died in that war is crazy. It's too many zeros for me to be able to read the number. It's like 9 zeros in that number. How do you even say that number? Yeah. Number of people that died in the Mahabharata. And so Yudhishthira was told that this war would happen between him and Duryodhana. Yudhishthira thought to himself, I will do everything in my power so that we don't fight. Because could not bear the thought of this horrendous war happening. Now, earlier she said if Faith was going to get married, all's good. Here he really didn't want it to happen. And there is fear of this horrible thing that's going to happen. So he gets invited to play a game of dice. And He knows. Yudhishthira knew before he stepped foot in that room that Duryodhana was cheating. And he thinks, if I don't do everything to keep peace, this war's going to happen. Just plain, let Duryodhana cheat. If Duryodhana won the whole kingdom, he should have stopped there. Yudhishthira should have also stopped there. And even though this part of the Mahabharata doesn't get told so well, Yudhishthira did try to stop. But people get overwhelmed with greed and power, and Duryodhana didn't want to stop. So as you all know the story, I'm not going to go too much into the story. All 5 brothers got made slaves, and Draupadi was lost in the game of dice. Draupadi was their wife. She was brought into the court, and then at that point, I think it was Duryodhana who said to strip her. In court, in public. Yudhishthira is thinking, this is not happening. And if I fight, it's going to be a full-on war. A lot of people here criticize Yudhishthira. How could he allow that to happen? I don't think there's a single person alive who wouldn't say that. How could Yudhishthira allow that to happen? In his head, Yudhishthira is thinking, a war is worse. Agree? Disagree? This is why Yudhishthira did it. What he didn't realize was the war is still going to happen. But now 2 horrible things have happened. Could have prevented this horrible thing from happening. So in the fear of trying to prevent a horrible thing from happening, we allow other horrible things to happen. But we're so lost in the emotional thinking of not wanting that one horrible thing to happen that we are completely blinded by all the horrible other things that are happening. Now this is Mahabharata war. It's not our lives. Yeah, we do it all the time. We don't want to have a difficult conversation with someone. And so we avoid it and we put it off and we deny and in the meantime we hurt so many others. Or you hurt that person even more by not just sitting down and having the difficult conversation. So emotional thinking might appear to be very rational. It's not. How will I know? Because it sounded you're all agreed with Dasharatha Maharaj and you're all agreed with Yudhishthira. And this is why books will sell, telling you why Ravana is amazing, because they'll use emotional thinking. And all of us will be like, yeah. And the intellect is thinking, would you just listen for 1 second? But please remember, mind will look for easy. Mind doesn't want to listen to intellect because it's hard. Okay. So how do I know if all my very rational thinking is emotional? Is it helping you get what you want? And to know that, you have to be very clear on what do you want. Are you aware of what it is you want? And are you aware of what it is you're scared of? Sometimes we're scared of losing our freedom. We don't want to have to deal with so much responsibility. A new position, a life change means responsibility. Means I have to let go some of my freedom. So then, no. So find ways not to have to do it. But make sure they sound very rational. And that I don't sound like I'm scared. Because if I sound like I'm scared, I don't look good. I don't look good to other people, and I don't even look good to myself. I don't even want to not look good to myself. So emotional thinking will make me look good. Okay, so as per science, we saw what are the things the lizard brain is usually scared of? Threat. Anything that threatens my survival. So that's fine. That's the purpose of fear, and we don't have to worry about that because we should survive. But now, body is fine. We say. So what is lizard brain protecting? Ego. Survival of my ego. Because body safe, it doesn't have to protect them. It needs a job. This is why spirituality is so hard. Because part of our brain is working really hard to keep ego alive and strong and healthy. And the other part of our brain is saying, oh gosh, you again. So what does ego want? So I go back to the scientist. So what the amygdala is scared of? Struggle. Any kind of struggle. One. Any kind of change. Two. What was the third one? Uncertainty. Three. That's what science books are. So they don't talk about ego though. Science books don't talk about ego. They just give these things that the amygdala is scared of. But if we look at our lives, we're scared of change. We're still wanting things to go back to normal. There's no going back to what we thought was normal 2 years ago. It's just not going to happen. It's been too long. But we don't like change. So we will still pray desperately for whatever it is we want. Emotional. Emotional thinking. Because intellect will tell you change is inevitable. There's that amazing quote, the only thing that doesn't change is change itself. And here I am praying for things not to change. emotional, right? We have to understand when we are doing emotional thinking. Somebody needs to mute. Okay, so what was I saying? Change, right? We get scared every time there's a change. So when there is change in our life, we have to do a quick check. What do I want? Because sometimes we want change because we want a certain kind of change. We want it to go this way, we don't want it to go that way. Or sometimes we don't want change. So we will resist and we will resist and we will resist. And what we resist will persist. So I'm creating a lot of stress in my life by resisting while it's changing. Or I'm creating a lot of stress in my life because I don't know which way it's going to go, and I just desperately want it to go one way. And this can be anything, right? This can be job, this can be relationship, this can be health, this can be politics. So being aware that change will trigger emotional thinking. The minute something in your life is changing, or the minute there's the possibility of something in your life changing, it will trigger emotional thinking. And so to quickly become aware. What do I want? The minute something is hard, it will trigger emotional thinking. And the minute there's uncertainty, it will trigger emotional thinking. The other thing that will trigger emotional thinking is my own strong likes and dislikes. So we saw in the Dashrath Maharaj example, it was attachment that triggered emotional thinking. So I strongly like, strongly dislike, desperately want to avoid. The minute there's a strong like and dislike, there's 100% desire. And the minute there's desire, there is emotional thinking. What I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of emotional thinking. Somebody had come to visit me, and they were telling me, I'm a very rational person. And then spoke highly emotionally for the next 45 minutes. But we want to see ourselves in a certain way. And so we don't want to acknowledge its emotional thinking. We don't want to acknowledge we are emotional. Why? Because the mind will make sure it gets what it wants. The minute I acknowledge this is emotional thinking, I may not get it. And then the last thing that will trigger a lot of emotional thinking, which I haven't spoken so much about, but plays such a humongous part in our lives, is how we see other people's perception of us. Because this is ego surviving. What's ego surviving? I am nice person. I am a light person. I am intelligent person. But all those qualities that makes ego feel I am worthy. We worthy without any of that, and we worthy despite it, with all variations and combinations, we are worthy. But ego will come up with these notions. I'm worthy if. And one of the big ones is, I am accepted. I am liked. I am judged in a positive way. And so, if this becomes slightly endangered, means but potentially somebody is going to speak unflatteringly about me. Potentially somebody would look down or criticize or disapprove. We're going to avalanche of emotional thinking. Not little, avalanche of emotional thinking. So once again, we're constantly with people. We're constantly interacting with people. There's constantly the possibility of someone liking me, not liking me, approving, not approving, praising, insulting. And so there's the constant possibility of emotional thinking. But I have to be aware. What do I want? Sometimes I don't want everyone to like me. I just want a particular person to like me. So if everyone else says, horrible idea, but if they say, that's not bad, all is fine. But maybe it was a horrible idea. And maybe I should have listened to everybody else. But emotional thinking will tell me, no, this one person who actually only is the person that matters, they like the idea, so all is fine. No need to listen to everyone else. Without us realizing, we have so many small perceived threats based on emotional thinking. We spoke about perceived threats last week, right? Actual threats, potential threats, perceived threat. And so, what's stressing us out very often is my own perceived threat based on emotional thinking. Solution for any type of fear which is not an actual threat in that moment is to move from lower thinking to higher thinking. To move from mind to intellect. Scientific terminology, to move from amygdala to cortex. Mind to intellect sounds better, but then I am conditioned. And so today I've spent a lot of time in making us aware of what is mind thinking. Because we tend to stay in mind thinking. You know, in a lot of therapy techniques, they'll recommend writing. And so when I would use them, sometimes I would think, so many things are bothering me and I'm thinking so many thoughts. And then I'll think, okay, let's use this technique. I sit down and you have to write. What is it that's bothering you? It's just one thing. I'm sitting there, I write the one thing, then it's like, what else? But I have so many thoughts. But it's just the one thing that's bothering me. Sometimes it's not even a big thing. Mind will keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. That's another way you know it's emotional thinking. It's like volcano eruption. Intellect is very wise. It doesn't have a lot to say. It says it, and then you know the kind of person I'm talking, right? They say the one sentence, and then they put their hands quiet. There's nothing more to say. So that's another way you know when your thoughts just going stir crazy. It's emotional thinking because intellect has one thing to say. That's irrational. Done. Doesn't have anything else to say. You cannot avoid the inevitable. That's it. That's all the intellect has to say. Mind is thinking for 6 hours on how to avoid the inevitable. Okay, so last week we also spoke about turning up the volume in intellect because we don't hear it often enough. And we'll only be able to hear it when we able to identify mind, emotional thinking, and then not fuel it. What do I mean by that? So thoughts thrive based on momentum. Best way to explain this to you, when the kids really want something, or even you, when you really want something. I want it, 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 I want it. So many thoughts on how to get it, why it's such a great thing to get, what I'll do with it when I get it, I promise you I'll appreciate it, and then you get it. What happens to all the thoughts now? No more momentum. Silence. Take away your momentum, thoughts will disappear. So when I really, really want something, getting it takes away the momentum. And we also lose interest usually within 48 hours. Usually. But we can't just go and get everything we want. And sometimes it's not possible. So then how to reduce momentum in thought? The analogy that's given is, when you push a swing, it will swing for a bit. And then it will stop. But usually when a kid's on a swing, they'll want you to push again. So then it goes higher, and it goes higher, and it goes higher, and it doesn't stop. In emotional thinking, every time you engage in the thought, you give it attention, you follow through on it. It's like pushing the swing. So you give that thought momentum. If you ignore the thought, it loses momentum and it disappears. I'll give you another example. Sometimes you like a song and you're really into the song, and then you keep playing it and you keep singing it, and then you get busy. You don't even remember the song. Then randomly it plays somewhere and you're like, oh yeah. But where did it go? There was a time when you were humming it all day. The minute it loses momentum, the thought will disappear. But with emotional thinking, especially when we don't recognize it as emotional thinking, we feed it. See, I'm right. I tell my friend about it. Tell the next friend about it. Tell the third friend about it. So much momentum. So when we reduce the momentum on emotional thoughts, we'll start to be able to hear what the intellect has to say. Intellect is very sweet. It's very patient. It waits for all the drama to settle. And then when we appreciate actual intellectual thoughts, I'm using intellectual because buddhi translates to intellect, knowledge-based thoughts, understanding-based thoughts, we see how much more fulfilling that is when we follow that, when we think in that line. It's so much more fulfilling. Then when mind and intellect start having the little debate, because I have experienced how fulfilling it is to listen to intellect, I'm more inclined to listen to intellect. And then momentum of mind will automatically reduce. But it has to start with awareness. And it's not that you were aware once and now you are aware. Awareness has to be constant. Okay, so dealing with fear is being aware of what's driving me. Which emotion, which desire, which thought. Okay, we pause here for today. Yes. Questions? Yeah.
Swami, you mentioned more inclined to intellect. So the goal is to go 100% intellect, or
Yeah.
that's not possible? Or?
No, you can go 100% intellect, but the mind doesn't stop feeling. And in fact, the intellect won't stop the mind from feeling. So you can go 100% intellect because the mind will still feel and you'll still have the whole range of emotions. Just you're so graceful about it. Graceful about every emotion. I remember once I saw Guruji getting angry. He actually went red. He was that angry. And he looked at all of us and he said, I'm really angry. So all of y'all leave now until the anger goes. And he locked the door. Otherwise, Guruji's door is never locked. He didn't come out for about 3 hours. And then when he opened the door again, he was cute little Guruji singing Radhe Radhe songs. So graceful. It's not that he doesn't have emotions. All of us have emotions. The mind is not dead. In fact, it adds beauty to our life. Help us feel love, compassion. It helps us sympathize with other people. It helps us support them. But be more graceful in the way we do things. And we less destructive in the way we do. It's beautiful conservation of energy. Because when we do the whole drama queen routine, so much energy. Why? It's tiring to watch only. I say like it's so unnecessary. So yes, the goal is to go 100% into that because it won't take away emotions. It just helps me balance them. Yeah.
Is that because in reality there is no separation?
Yeah.
So actually,
They are, it's one entity.
we're trying to use the intellectual part of our
Yeah.
mind instead of the emotional part.
No, we're not denying the emotions. We're just allowing intellect to guide the emotions. For instance, okay, I grew up in South Africa in apartheid, and racism was normal. It was legal. It was so much a part of everyone's psyche. So if I see a person, reaction would be based on the conditionings of racism. But intellect can say, divine person, whatever the color, whatever the religion. And so sometimes mind is actually incorrect. It can have such a strong reaction. And with racism, we really see we can have such a strong reaction to a person on no basis whatsoever. We don't know them. And so intellect says, this reaction's not necessary. Hush now. And you talk to the person. And you think, oh, nice guy. Great sense of humor. Or serious. I'll go talk to someone else. But not because of the color of the skin. So emotions are fine, but not to make decisions. Sometimes anger will come. Who won't feel it? Fear will come. But when fear comes, is this legit? Is it something I should listen to? Is it going to enhance my life? Is it actually protecting me? Or is it stifling me? Intellect has to make that assessment. Then if it's real fear, if cases of COVID are in the thousands, stay indoors. Wash your hands 25 times an hour. It's legit. If not, it's okay. Go out, wear the mask. Be cautious, but go ahead and do this. So you'll feel that how much attention to give that feeling is to be decided by intellect. Did I answer your question? Sometimes I get carried away. I liked a nice word yesterday. What was it? Tangential. Yeah, I know. Time's up. Any other questions? No? Online people, any questions?
Hari and Swamiji, I've got a question if I may ask.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh, Using the example of, say, anger, for example, I know with Puja Gurudev, there were like cases where he would use anger as almost an instrument or a tool, just to kind of at his sort of leisure. Are there any examples, whether with Gurudev or any sort of realized master, of the emotion of fear and them actually kind of almost pretending to have fear or using fear in any way? Or is it just something they transcend the emotion of fear altogether?
For themselves, they feel it, right? Because there's no fear of death, so you're not going to fear anything then. But of course, there's loving concern for other people. So Gurudev would definitely be concerned. You know, if somebody was traveling alone in a dangerous area, even if they weren't traveling alone, in fact, standard policy in the ashram is you have to call to tell them you reach safely. Like, you know, like, really? How old am I? Come on. No, I don't need to. Yes, you do. You have to call to tell them you reach safely. So there's loving concern for other people's welfare. And you'll see it in small ways and you'll see it in big ways. Right? So there'll be, you know, have you eaten, which is the smallest thing. And then while COVID has hit, you know, elaborate efforts being put in to alleviate people's suffering. So it's not fear, like as in, you know, I'm scared, but of course I don't want to see people suffering. I want to alleviate it, and that kind of anxiety to do for other people. So we see it manifest as an expression of concern and love.
Amazing. Thank you, Krishna.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhave, asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnam Purnamidachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.